He was a renowned and millionaire surgeon, haunted by a personal tragedy. She was pregnant and abandoned, alone in the hospital on her delivery day. He finds her there weeping. Her desolation strikes him, echoing his own pain. Moved by compassion, Victor adopts her, offering a home, resources, and the family she never had. Prepare for a twist where society and the past will try to destroy this newfound family. But true love will prove that compassion can heal all wounds. Watch this story until the end. You will be surprised by this story. If you like stories of love, romance, subscribe to this channel, leave your comment. We post videos like this every day. Continuing. The rain hammered against the windows of St. Joseph's Hospital when Mariana Suarez felt the first truly powerful contraction. At 24, she held her 9-month belly with both hands, trying to control her breathing, as she had learned in the prenatal classes she'd attended alone. Each session had been a cruel reminder of her solitude. Other women accompanied by their husbands, mothers, or mothers-in-law, while she always occupied a chair in the corner, pretending she didn't care. The cab that brought her to the hospital had left 2 hours ago, taking with it the last $50 she possessed. Rodrigo had disappeared 3 months ago, taking not only her savings, but also all the dreams she had built about forming a family. His words still echoed in her mind. "I'm not ready for this, Mari. You'll be fine." As if abandoning a pregnant woman was an act of kindness. Mariana looked around the pre-labor room, observing other expectant mothers accompanied by anxious family members. She bit her lower lip, a habit she'd developed to hold back tears. There was no one to call. Her parents had died in an accident when she was 19, and the aunt who raised her afterward had made it clear that a pregnancy out of wedlock would not be welcome in her evangelical home. The pain intensified, and she bent over, breathing deeply. A nurse approached, checking her dilation with professional efficiency, but Mariana sensed the pity in the woman's gaze when she realized there was no one on the emergency contact list. 3 floors above, Dr. Victor Caldwell was finishing a complex cardiac surgery that had lasted 8 hours. At 42, he was considered one of the best cardiovascular surgeons in the country, and his network of private hospitals had made him a millionaire before 40. His hands saved lives daily, but his own existence had become an exercise in technical precision and emotional emptiness. The mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut, awaited him empty, as always. 5 bedrooms, 7 bathrooms, a pool that no one used, and a silence that suffocated him. Helena had left 3 years ago, taking with her not only the marriage, but also the hopes of having children. "You love your patients more than me," were her last words, and Victor knew she was right. He was walking through the hospital corridors, checking on other patients, when he was approached by the head nurse of the obstetrics ward, Donna Carmen, a 60-year-old woman who had worked there for decades and feared no doctor. "Dr. Caldwell, I need to talk to you," she said. With that tone he knew well, something was wrong. "What is it, Carmen?" "We have a delicate situation in OB. A young woman of 24, first child, been in labor for 6 hours. Completely alone. No family, no baby's father, nobody." Carmen sighed. "She's trying to be strong, but she's breaking inside. I've never seen anything like it, doctor. A child having a child with nobody in the world." Victor frowned. Social cases weren't his specialty, and he preferred to stay away from patients' personal dramas. "Call the social worker on duty." "She's already been called, but she won't be here until morning. The girl is going into active labor now, doctor, and there's something else." Carmen hesitated. "I overheard her crying and saying she doesn't know how she's going to take care of the baby." "She has nothing, doctor, literally nothing." Something in Carmen's voice stirred Victor in a way he couldn't explain. Perhaps it was the image of a woman completely alone at the most vulnerable moment of her life, or perhaps it was the echo of his own loneliness reflected in her situation. "Which room is she in?" he asked, surprising himself. "Room 3. "Doctor, you don't have to get involved." But Victor was already walking towards the obstetrics ward. When he reached the door of room 3, he stopped. Through the glass, he saw a young woman with dark brown hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, wearing a faded blue hospital gown. She was breathing deeply during a contraction, her eyes closed, her hands gripping the sheets tightly. Alone. It was when she opened her eyes that something shifted inside Victor's chest. They were light brown eyes, full of physical pain, but mainly of a sadness so profound that he felt as if he had been punched. She looked directly at him through the glass, and for a moment, two completely different worlds connected through a gaze. The contraction passed, and Mariana let her head fall back on the pillow, a solitary tear running down her face. Victor saw her whisper into the void, "Please, God, help me be strong for him." Without realizing when he had made the decision, Victor pushed the door open and entered the room. Mariana looked up startled as the door opened. A tall man with graying hair at the temples and piercing blue eyes entered the room with the confident posture that only years of medicine could provide. He wore surgical scrubs and a spotless white coat, and there was something about his presence that immediately filled the small space with a silent authority. "Good evening," Victor said, in a voice softer than he himself expected. "I'm Dr. Victor Caldwell. How are you feeling?" Mariana tried to sit up in bed, embarrassed by her disheveled appearance in front of this clearly important man. She had heard of Dr. Caldwell. Everyone in the hospital spoke of him with almost religious reverence. The millionaire surgeon, owner of a network of hospitals, a man who saved lives and moved mountains with a simple phone call. I'm fine, doctor," she lied, quickly wiping away the tear that still glistened on her face. "I'm sorry, you don't need to worry about me. I know you must have more important cases to take care of." Victor approached slowly, studying the monitor that recorded the baby's heartbeat. "There's no case more important than a new life coming into the world," he said, surprising himself with his own words. He never spoke like that. His approach was always clinical, direct, without emotional involvement. Another contraction hit Mariana with brutal force, and she bent over, biting her lip to keep from screaming. Instinctively, Victor moved to her side, placing a hand on her shoulder. The touch was electric for both of them. She had never felt hands so firm and comforting, and he hadn't touched someone with genuine tenderness in years. "Breathe with me," Victor instructed, his voice taking on a hypnotically calm tone. "Inhale slowly, exhale slowly, that's right." Mariana followed his guidance, and for the first time in hours, the pain seemed more bearable. When the contraction passed, she looked at him with gratitude, but also with confusion. Why was a man like him here, with her? "Where's the baby's father?" Victor asked, although Carmen had already given him the answer. Mariana's face closed off, and she looked away. "He's not here." "And your family?" "Neither are they." Her voice was almost inaudible. "Actually, doctor, there's no one. Just me and my son." Victor felt something clench in his chest. The absolute vulnerability of that young woman awakened in him a protective instinct that he thought he had lost long ago. She was so young, so alone, so different from the women in his social circle who were calculating, self-serving, always with ulterior motives. "What's your name?" he asked. Mariana Suarez." "Mariana," Victor repeated, and the name sounded different in his deep voice. "Do you have somewhere to stay after the baby is born?" She hesitated, and he saw the lie forming before she even spoke. "Yes, of course." "Don't lie to me," Victor said, but without harshness. "I've been a doctor for 20 years. I know when someone is lying about having support." Mariana felt tears welling up in her eyes again. I'll manage. I've always managed on my own." At that moment, Victor made a decision that would change both of their lives forever. He pulled up a chair and sat next to her bed, something he never did with patience. "You don't have to manage on your own this time," he said, the words coming out before his rational mind could stop them. Mariana stared at him, incredulous. "Doctor, I can't accept charity. I'm already receiving free treatment through Medicaid. I don't want to be another burden on anyone." "It's not charity," Victor said, and realized he was telling the truth. There was something about that woman, a silent strength mixed with fragility, that drew him in a way he didn't understand. It's humanity. Before Mariana could answer, a nurse rushed in. "Dr. Caldwell, sorry to interrupt, but we have a cardiac emergency in the ICU. Could you—" Victor got up immediately, his medical instinct taking over. But when he looked at Mariana, he saw the panic in her eyes, the fear of being alone again. "I'll be back," he promised, briefly placing his hand over hers. "I won't leave you alone at this moment." Mariana squeezed his hand with a desperate strength. "You promise?" Victor looked into her brown eyes and felt something he hadn't felt in years, the genuine need to protect someone. "I promise." He rushed off to the emergency room, but throughout the cardiac surgery that followed, his mind was divided between the patient he was operating on and the young pregnant woman waiting for him 3 floors below. For the first time in his career, Victor Caldwell was being professionally impeccable, while his heart was completely somewhere else. When he finally returned to the obstetrics ward, 2 hours later, still in surgical scrubs, he found Mariana in advanced labor. She had asked about him at least 10 times, according to the nurses, and her eyes lit up when she saw him enter the room. "You came back," she whispered, between contractions. "I said I would," Victor replied, naturally assuming the place beside her that no other man should occupy. "And I'll stay until your son is born." At that moment, they both knew that something had changed irreversibly between them, although neither of them completely understood what. "Bruno." The baby's first cry echoed through the room at 3 in the morning, a sound that cut through the silence and touched Victor's heart in a way he didn't expect. The boy was small but healthy, with strong lungs and clenched fists, fighting against the world from the first second of life. Victor had remained by Mariana's side throughout the delivery, holding her hand, wiping her sweat, whispering words of encouragement. When the obstetrician placed the baby in her arms, Victor saw something in her eyes that took his breath away. A love so pure and instant that it seemed to illuminate the entire room. "Hello, my love," Mariana whispered to her son, tears streaming freely down her face. "Mommy is here, I'll always be here." Victor stepped back discreetly, giving her privacy for that first sacred moment between mother and son. But when she looked up and sought him out, he realized that she wanted to share that joy with him. "Doctor, you saved my life today," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't need to thank me for anything," Victor replied, but his voice was hoarser than normal. Watching the birth of that child had awakened in him an old pain, a wound he thought had healed. In the following hours, while Mariana and the baby were transferred to the room, Victor should have returned to his normal obligations. But he found himself checking on their condition constantly, inventing medical excuses to appear in the room. Mariana had named the baby Gabriel, and Victor found that he liked holding him when she needed to rest. The weight of the boy in his arms awakened memories that he had buried deep. "You're a natural with babies," Mariana commented on the second night, watching Victor cradle Gabriel gently. "Do you have children?" The question hit Victor like a physical blow. He almost dropped the baby, and Mariana immediately noticed the change in his expression. "Sorry," she said quickly. "I didn't mean to be intrusive." Victor was silent for a long moment, looking at Gabriel's serene face. "No," he said finally, "I've never had children." But there was something in the way he said it, a deep pain in the words that made Mariana realize that there was much more to that answer. She didn't press, but observed how he held Gabriel as if he were the most precious thing in the world, as if he were trying to memorize every detail. During those 3 days in the hospital, a strange routine developed. Victor appeared in her room several times a day, always with some medical justification. But they both knew that his visits went far beyond hospital protocol. He brought food from expensive restaurants when he noticed that she barely touched the hospital food. He arranged for a private bassinet when he saw that Gabriel had to share the standard bassinet with another baby. Small gestures that spoke much louder than words. Mariana, in turn, began to perceive the layers behind Victor's professional facade. She noticed how he tensed when his cell phone rang, how he avoided talking about his personal life, how his eyes became distant when other women in the hospital, nurses, doctors, tried to flirt with him. "Doctor," she said on the third night when he appeared in the room after a particularly long day of surgeries, "can I ask you a personal question?" Victor hesitated, but nodded. "Why don't you have a family? A man like you, there must be a line of women interested." Victor laughed, but it was a humorless sound. "Interested in what I can give them, maybe, not in who I am." "And who are you?" Mariana asked softly. For the first time since they met, Victor seemed completely vulnerable. He sat in the chair next to her bed, running his hands through his hair. "Someone who dedicated so much time to saving other people's lives that he forgot how to live his own," he admitted. "Someone who has had everything money can buy, but never had what really matters." Mariana reached out, gently touching his arm. The touch was like an electric spark for both of them. "You have a huge heart," she said. "I've seen it in the last few days. The way you take care of Gabriel, the way you take care of me, that can't be bought with money." Victor looked at her, really looked, and saw not just a pretty young woman, but a woman with an inner strength that he had never encountered before. Someone who had gone through abandonment and loneliness, but still managed to see goodness in the world. "Mariana," he said, his voice barely more than a whisper, "there are things in my past, reasons why I avoid getting emotionally involved with people." "We all have pasts," she replied. "What matters is who we choose to be now." At that moment, Victor almost told her about Helena, about the years of failed attempts to have children, about how the marriage had disintegrated under the weight of infertility and his workaholism. He almost told her about how he had closed himself off emotionally after that, building walls so high that no one else could climb them. But the sound of Gabriel waking up interrupted the moment, and the opportunity passed. "He's hungry," Mariana said, picking up the baby. "Would you like to stay while I breastfeed?" The question was intimate, vulnerable, and Victor knew he should decline, but he found himself nodding, completely unable to leave her. As he watched Mariana feed Gabriel, Victor realized that he was witnessing something he had wanted his whole life. A real family, unconditional love, the kind of connection that money could never buy. And for the first time in years, Dr. Victor Caldwell allowed himself to imagine what it would be like to be part of that perfect picture. On the fourth morning, Victor arrived at the hospital with a proposal that had kept him awake all night. He found Mariana packing her few things into a plastic bag, preparing for hospital discharge. Gabriel slept peacefully in the bassinet next to the bed, oblivious to the uncertain future that awaited him. "Where are you going?" Victor asked, although he already knew the answer from the way she avoided his gaze. "I'll manage," Mariana replied, her voice trying to sound more confident than she felt. I know a homeless shelter that accepts mothers with babies. It's temporary, but no. The word came out firmer than Victor intended. That's not going to happen. Mariana stopped packing and looked at him. Doctor, I know you care, but I can't keep depending on your kindness. I've already done it for too long. Victor approached, his hands trembling slightly, something that never happened, not even during the most complex surgeries. Mariana, I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen to me until the end. She sat on the edge of the bed, Gabriel still sleeping, in her arms waiting. 3 years ago, my marriage ended, Victor began, the words coming out with difficulty. Helena and I tried to have children for 5 years. We did all the treatments possible, spent a fortune, went through dozens of doctors. Nothing worked. He paused, taking a deep breath. The fault was mine, fertility problems that no money in the world could solve. Mariana felt her heart clench, seeing the raw pain in his eyes. Helena left me because I became obsessed with work, because it was easier to save other lives than to face the fact that I couldn't create one. She said that I had become an empty man, that I loved my patients more than her. Victor sat in the chair next to the bed, and she was right. Doctor, Mariana began, but he raised his hand. In the last 4 days, holding Gabriel, taking care of you, I've felt more alive than I have in years. You and your son reminded me of who I used to be before I got lost, in the emptiness of my own existence. Mariana's eyes filled with tears, but Victor continued. I can't let you go to a homeless shelter. I can't let Gabriel grow up without having all the opportunities that I can offer. He got up, walking to the window. I want you to come live with me. The silence that followed was deafening. Mariana looked at Victor as if he had spoken in another language. What? My house has 7 bedrooms. Gabriel would have everything he needs, education, healthcare, a future. You would never have to worry about money again or be afraid of tomorrow. Victor turned to her. In return, you would give me something that money can never buy, a family. But, Doctor, that's crazy, Mariana whispered. People will think that we are what? A non-traditional family, that I adopted you? Victor approached again. Mariana, I don't care what people think. I care about what's right. Gabriel chose that moment to wake up and cry, as if he could feel the tension in the air. Mariana cradled him automatically, but her eyes didn't leave Victor's face. This would change everything, she said. Your life, your reputation, your relationships. My life already changed the moment I walked into this room 4 days ago, Victor replied, and as for the rest, maybe it's time for a change anyway. At that instant, the door to the room opened abruptly. An elegant woman of about 40, wearing an expensive suit and carrying a designer purse, stormed in like a hurricane. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, and there was a calculated coldness in her blue eyes. Victor, she said, with a voice that cut through the air, like a blade. I've finally found you. Victor stiffened completely. Helena. Mariana felt the world spin as she realized who that woman was. The ex-wife. The woman who had left Victor broken. Helena looked around the room, her eyes stopping. On Mariana holding Gabriel, then returning to Victor with an expression of barely disguised contempt. So it's true, she said, a cruel smile playing on her lips. The nurses are gossiping all over the hospital, the renowned Dr. Victor Caldwell playing daddy with a, how did they put it? Oh yes, a street urchin who had a child and was abandoned. Helena, get out of here, Victor said, his voice dangerously low. Oh no, dear, I'm not leaving. Helena approached Mariana, who instinctively held Gabriel tighter. I came to make you a proposal that might interest you. I'm not interested in anything you have to say. Helena laughed, a humorless sound. Not even if I say that I want to come back, that I realized my mistake and want us to try to have children again, that we can adopt a suitable child?" The silence that followed was charged with tension. Mariana felt her heart stop as she saw the confusion flash across Victor's eyes. "You can have the family you always wanted, Victor," Helena continued, completely ignoring Mariana's presence. "Or you can throw your career and reputation in the trash because of this." She gestured dismissively towards Mariana and Gabriel. It was then that Victor made the most important decision of his life. He moved to stand between Helena and Mariana, creating a protective barrier. "My answer is no, Helena, and it will always be no." Helena's face contorted in fury. "You'll regret this, Victor. I'll make sure you regret it." She stormed out of the room like a hurricane, leaving behind a palpable threat in the air. Victor turned to Mariana, who was pale and trembling. "Don't worry about her. Helena has always been dramatic." But Mariana knew with a terrible certainty that that woman would be a problem, and that accepting Victor's proposal would mean entering a war for which she was not prepared. "Doctor," she said, her voice barely more than a whisper, "maybe I should go to the homeless shelter after all." "No," Victor replied, gently taking her hands. "Now more than ever, you need to come with me. I need to protect you." And at that moment, they both knew that there was no turning back. They had crossed a line from which they could not return. 2 weeks later, Mariana's life had transformed into something out of a fairy tale. Victor's mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut, was larger than any place she had ever imagined living. Perfectly manicured gardens, a pool that sparkled under the sun, rooms with a view of an endless horizon. Gabrielle had a nursery that looked like it came out of a magazine, with imported furniture and all the equipment a baby could need. But it was in the small things that Mariana saw the true change in Victor. The way he arrived from the hospital and went straight to the nursery to see Gabriel. How he held the baby during the middle of the night feedings, even after surgeries that lasted hours. How he smiled, really smiled, for the first time in years. "He's growing so fast," Victor commented one Sunday morning, watching Gabriel in his stroller in the garden. They had developed a breakfast routine together, Victor, Mariana, and Gabriel, like a real family. "Babies do that," Mariana replied. But there was something in her voice that made Victor look at her attentively. "Are you okay? You seem worried." Mariana hesitated. In the last few weeks, she had felt something changing between them. The looks that lasted longer. The way Victor touched her hand when passing the coffee. How he found excuses to stay close to her. And above all, how she had begun to feel about him. "Victor," she said, using his first name for the first time. "People are talking." He stiffened. "What people?" "Your housekeeper, Donna Rosa, made a comment about how it's strange a young woman my age living here. The security guards at the gated community look at me differently. And yesterday when I went to the pediatrician with Gabriel, the receptionist asked if I was Dr. Caldwell's new girlfriend." Victor put the coffee cup on the table more forcefully than necessary. "And what did you answer?" "That I take care of the baby," Mariana said quickly. But the question made me think, "Victor, what exactly are we?" The question hung in the air between them like a bomb about to explode. Victor knew the answer, but he didn't have the courage to say it out loud. He had fallen in love with Mariana in a way so deep and unexpected that it frightened him. Before he could answer, the phone rang. It was Dr. Edward Mendez, his senior, partner and friend of decades. "Victor, we need to talk," Edward said, his tone serious. "Can you come to the hospital now?" An hour later, Victor was in Edward's office, facing not only his partner, but also 3 other doctors from the hospital board. They all looked uncomfortable. "Victor," Edward began, "we need to discuss a delicate situation. If it's about Mariana and Gabriel, It's exactly about that, interrupted Dr. Silvera, the most conservative doctor in the group. Victor, you are the face of this institution. Your reputation is fundamental to maintaining our clientele and investors. And what does that have to do with my personal life? Everything, replied Dr. Cardoso. The gossip is spreading, Victor. A young woman of 24, single, living in your house with a baby. People are drawing conclusions. Edward sighed. Helena came to see us, Victor. Victor's blood ran cold. What did she say? That you are going through a midlife crisis. That this situation could compromise not only your reputation, but that of the entire hospital. Edward stood up. She has contacts in the press, Victor, and she's threatening to leak the story. What story? There's no story. Victor, said Dr. Silvera, do you really expect us to believe that a 42-year-old man, millionaire, single, is simply helping an attractive young woman out of pure kindness, with nothing in return? The implication in Silvera's words made Victor stand up abruptly. Watch what you say. Or what? Dr. Cardoso joined the conversation. Victor, be realistic. If this story leaks, it will be a scandal. Millionaire doctor lives with young single mother. The tabloids will have a field day. And our fertility clinic will suffer especially, added Silvera. How will our patients trust a doctor who couldn't have children with his own wife, but is now playing daddy with another woman's child? Edward tried to smooth things over. Victor, we're not questioning your intentions, but you need to think about the consequences. For you, for us, and especially for this young woman. You think you're helping her, but when this story explodes, she'll be torn apart by the media. Victor felt a weight in his chest. He knew Edward was right about one thing. Mariana would be crucified if the story leaked. She would be painted as an opportunist, a gold digger, a user. What are you suggesting? Victor asked, his voice dangerously low. That you find a discreet solution, replied Silvera. Help the young woman financially to settle somewhere else. Pay child support if you want, but stop this charade of a happy family before it becomes a public scandal. Victor looked at each of the men in the office, men he considered friends, colleagues of decades, and saw only cowardice and hypocrisy. And if I refuse? The four men exchanged glances. It was Edward who spoke. Victor, you have 40% of the shares in the hospital network. We together have 60. If this turns into a public scandal that damages our reputation, the threat didn't need to be completed. Victor understood perfectly. They could force him to sell his shares, remove him from the board, destroy everything he had built. You have 1 week to resolve this discreetly, said Dr. Cardoso. After that, we can no longer protect you from the consequences. Victor left the hospital with a terrible certainty. The war had begun, and Mariana didn't even know she was in the line of fire. When he arrived home, he found her in the garden, Gabriel sleeping in her arms while she hummed a lullaby. The image was so perfect, so pure, that Victor felt his heart break. How could he protect her from what was to come? How could he choose between the love he had finally found and everything he had worked for his entire life? And above all, how could he look into her eyes and tell her that the world was conspiring to separate them? Victor spent 3 days trying to find a solution that would protect Mariana without destroying what they had built together. 3 days, watching her play with Gabriel in the garden, unaware that a storm was approaching. 3 nights awake, imagining how to tell her that the world had decided that their love was a scandal. On Thursday morning, everything collapsed. Victor was at the hospital when he received a frantic call from Donna Rosa, the housekeeper. "Doctor, there are people at the door, reporters, photographers. They're shouting questions about Miss Mariana." Victor's blood ran cold. "Where is she?" "Locked in the room with the baby, crying. Doctor, they know her name, they know her age, they know everything." Victor hung up the phone and raced home, but when he arrived at the gated community, he saw the crowd of journalists at the entrance. Flashes were flashing, microphones were extended towards his car. "Dr. Caldwell, is it true that you are supporting a 24-year-old woman? Doctor, is the baby yours? Dr. Caldwell, your ex-wife says you're going through a crisis." Victor managed to enter the house from the back, finding Mariana in her room, sitting on the floor next to Gabriel's crib, holding a tablet with trembling hands. On the screen, the headline of a gossip website screamed, "Millionaire doctor lives with young single mother in luxury mansion." "Mariana," Victor began, but she looked up and he saw in her eyes a mixture of betrayal and despair that made him stop in mid-sentence. "You knew," she said, her voice barely more than a whisper. "You knew this was going to happen." I was trying to find a way to protect you." Mariana stood up, the tablet still in her hand. "Protect? Protect from what? From the truth?" She read aloud. Sources close to the couple reveal that the young Mariana Suarez, of humble origins, was found by the doctor during childbirth and has since lived in his millionaire mansion. The doctor's ex-wife, Helena Caldwell, expresses concern about the mental state of her ex-husband. She threw the tablet on the bed. "They painted me as a gold digger, Victor. As a woman who used my son to get money. Mariana, you know that's not true, do I? Because you never told me what we are," she exploded. "We've lived like a family for weeks. You take care of my son as if he were your father. You look at me like... She stopped, tears streaming down her face. "And I never knew if it was real or if it was just pity." Victor approached, but she recoiled. "It was real, it is real. Mariana, You what?" she cried. "You love me? Then why didn't you protect me from this? Why did you let me find out through the newspapers that we are the scandal of Connecticut?" Before Victor could answer, Gabriel began to cry, frightened by the shouting. Mariana picked him up, cradling him against her chest, and Victor saw how her hands trembled. "They're outside our house," she said, her voice breaking, "taking pictures, shouting. Gabriel will grow up knowing that his mother was called a gold digger in the press." At that moment, Victor's phone rang. It was Edward. "Victor, you need to see the television, now." Victor turned on the TV in the room, and they both watched in horror as Helena appeared on a gossip show, impeccably dressed, with an expression of calculated concern. "I am very concerned about Victor," she was saying to the host. "Our marriage ended because he couldn't overcome the trauma of not being able to have children. And now, this unhealthy obsession with a young woman with a baby. I'm afraid he's having a nervous breakdown." The host leaned forward. "Do you believe he might be being manipulated?" Helena sighed dramatically. "This young woman is very young, very vulnerable. Maybe she doesn't even realize the harm she's doing. But Victor has always been too generous, always wanted to save everyone. I'm afraid he's confusing compassion with love." "Turn it off," Mariana whispered, but Victor was paralyzed, watching his ex-wife methodically destroy everything he loved most. "And there are rumors that the hospital partners are worried," Helena continued. "The reputation of a medical institution is fundamental. Patients need to trust their doctors." Mariana turned off the television forcefully. Enough. The silence that followed was deafening. Gabriel had stopped crying and was sleeping in his mother's arms, oblivious to the storm that was shattering his little family. "Mariana," Victor tried again, "none of this matters. None of what they say changes the What I feel for you? It changes everything," she replied without looking at him. "Victor, I have no money, no influence, no way to fight this, but you do. You can choose." "Choose what?" Finally, she looked at him, and Victor saw that there was something different in her eyes, a strength that he had never seen before. "Your career or us? your reputation or your family, everything you've built, or this love you say you feel. Mariana, it's not that simple. It is exactly that simple, she interrupted him, because I've already chosen. Victor's heart stopped. What do you mean? Mariana went to the closet and pulled out a suitcase that he hadn't noticed before. I'm leaving your life, Victor, today. No. Victor moved to block the door. I'm not going to let you go. You don't have a choice, she said, placing Gabriel in the crib and starting to fold her clothes. Look outside, Victor. Look at the circus our life has become. Do you think this is good for Gabriel? Growing up knowing that his mother is seen as a gold digger? But it's not true! The truth doesn't matter, Mariana shouted, her emotions finally exploding. What matters is what people believe, and they believe I'm a user who seduced a millionaire. Doctor, to have an easy life. She stopped packing the suitcase and turned to him, tears streaming down her face. Victor, I fell in love with you, completely, irrevocably. For the first time in my life, I felt truly loved and protected. Victor's heart broke as he heard the words he had dreamed of hearing. But I can't stay, she continued. I can't be the reason you lose everything you've built. I can't let Gabriel grow up in the middle of this scandal, and I can't live knowing that every time you look at me, you'll be thinking about the price you paid for loving me. Mariana, please, don't make this harder than it already is, she whispered, closing the suitcase. Victor watched her pick up Gabriel, gently kiss the baby's forehead, and walk towards the door. As she passed him, Victor gently held her arm. Where are you going? I don't know, she answered honestly, but we'll be okay. We always manage. What if I choose you? Victor asked desperately. What if I throw everything away for you? Mariana smiled through her tears. Then you'd regret it for the rest of your life, and I could never live with that. She broke free from his touch and left the room. Victor heard her going down the stairs, talking to Donna Rosa, the front door opening and closing. When he finally managed to move to the window, he saw Mariana walking down the street with Gabriel in her arms and the suitcase in her hand, surrounded by reporters who were shouting questions and taking pictures. And Victor Caldwell, who had saved thousands of lives throughout his career, was paralyzed, unable to save the only two people who really mattered to him. The house fell silent, and for the first time in weeks, Victor was completely alone again. Mariana spent the first 3 days at the municipal homeless shelter, trying to convince herself that she had made the right decision. The place was clean but overcrowded, and the constant crying of Gabriel mixed with that of other children created a cacophony that didn't let her sleep. She shared a small room with 2 other single mothers, their stories echoing her own in different versions of the same tragedy. On the 4th day, when she was breastfeeding Gabriel in a plastic chair in the courtyard, a woman approached. She was short with grey hair pulled back in a bun, wearing simple but impeccable clothes. You're the Mariana from the newspapers, the woman said bluntly. Mariana stiffened, preparing for more judgments. I am. So what? The woman smiled. My name is Carmen. I've been the head nurse at St. Joseph's Hospital for 30 years, and I need to talk to you. It was Carmen who told Mariana about the secret meetings at the hospital, about the pressure from the partners on Victor, about how Helena had orchestrated everything down to the smallest detail. That woman is a viper, Carmen said, drinking a watery coffee in the shelter's canteen. I never could understand how Dr. Victor married her, but now I know why. She's calculating, manipulative, and knows exactly how to make a man feel guilty. Why are you telling me this? Mariana asked. Because in 30 years of profession, I have never seen Dr. Victor look at anyone the way he looked at you and Gabriel, Carmen replied. That man was dead inside when you arrived, and he was finally alive when you left. Mariana shook her head. It doesn't matter, Carmen. The damage is done. Victor made his choice. Did he? Or was he forced to make it? The question echoed in Mariana's mind for days. Meanwhile, the news continued. Photos of her leaving the shelter, headlines speculating about where she was, cruel articles about her fall from a mansion to a shelter. It was then that she received an unexpected visit. Edward Mendez appeared at the shelter on a rainy morning, clearly uncomfortable in the simple environment. He asked to speak to her in private, and they sat at a table in the empty canteen. "Miss Suarez," he began, "I came here to make a proposal." Mariana looked at him suspiciously. "What kind of proposal?" "Victor doesn't know I'm here," Edward said quickly. "In fact, he would kill me if he knew. But the situation is unsustainable." "For whom?" Edward sighed. "For everyone. For Victor, for you, for the hospital, for Gabriel." Mariana felt a chill. "Get to the point." "I can arrange a substantial amount of money for you. Enough to move to another city, start a new life, give your son a quality education." Edward leaned forward. "In exchange, you disappear. Definitely. Never contact Victor again, never talk to the press about him." The offer hung in the air between them. Mariana looked at Gabriel, who was sleeping peacefully in his stroller, and felt a fury growing in her chest. "How much?" she asked, her voice dangerously low. Edward seemed relieved. $500,000, deposited into an account in any city you choose." Mariana was silent for a long moment. Then she stood up slowly. "You know what's most pathetic about your proposal, Dr. Edward?" she said, her voice gaining strength. "Is that you really believe that I did all this for money?" Edward blinked, confused. Wasn't it?" "No," Mariana replied, picking up Gabriel. "I fell in love with a man who I thought had the courage to fight for what he loved. I was wrong, apparently." She walked to the door, but stopped and turned around. "And you know why I'm going to reject your dirty proposal? Because when my son grows up and asks about the father he chose to have for some months, I want to be able to tell him that his mother had enough dignity not to accept dirty money." Edward stood up, desperate. "Miss, be reasonable. Victor is destroying everything he's built. The other partners are considering forcing him to sell his shares." "Then let them," Mariana shouted, attracting the attention of other people in the canteen. "If his career is worth more than love, then let them have it." She left Edward alone, but her words continued to echo in his mind all the way back to the room. Victor was being forced to sell his shares? What did that mean? That night, alone in the dark room of the shelter, Mariana made a decision. If they were going to destroy Victor because of her, at least she would find out the whole truth first. In the following days, Mariana began her own investigation. Carmen helped her, introducing her to other hospital employees who were outraged by the treatment Victor was receiving. She discovered that Helena had approached not only the partners, but also influential patients, spreading rumors about Victor's mental instability. "She's trying to completely destroy his reputation," said Dr. Fernanda, a young cardiologist who admired Victor. She told Senator Cartwright's wife that Victor might be having a nervous breakdown, that it's not safe to be operated on by him. Mariana felt her blood boil. "And the other doctors are letting this happen?" "Some are afraid," Fernanda admitted. "Senator Cartwright is one of the hospital's biggest investors. If he withdraws financial support..." It was Carmen who brought the most devastating information. "I found something out, dear," she said, meeting Mariana in the playground where she took Gabriel to get some sun. "Helena isn't acting alone." "What do you mean?" "She has a new boyfriend, Richard Alvarenga, owner of a competing hospital network." Carmen sat next to Mariana on the bench. "If Victor is forced to sell his shares of St. Joseph's, guess who's interested in buying them?" Mariana felt the world spin around her. You're saying that all of this is a plot for her to get back at Victor and destroy his hospital at the same time? I'm saying that Helena has always been ambitious, but now she has financial motivation too, Carmen replied. If she manages to buy Victor's shares at a low price during the scandal, she and her boyfriend will control the largest network of private hospitals in Connecticut. At that moment, Mariana understood the extent of the betrayal. It wasn't just about jealousy or personal revenge. It was an elaborate plan to destroy Victor in every way, personally, professionally, and financially. And she had been the perfect tool for it. I need to talk to Victor, Mariana said, standing up abruptly. He's in a meeting with the lawyers today, Carmen informed her, trying to find a way to keep the shares. But dear, she hesitated. Maybe it's too late. The partners' meeting to force the sale is tomorrow. Mariana looked at Gabriel, who was playing happily with a rattle, oblivious to the storm around him. For the first time since leaving the mansion, she knew exactly what she needed to do. If Helena wanted a war, she would have a war. But first, Mariana needed allies, and she knew exactly where to find them. The partners' meeting was scheduled for 10 in the morning on a Friday. At 9:30, Victor sat at the conference table of St. Joseph's Hospital, surrounded by men he once considered friends. His lawyer at his side organized papers that they both knew were useless. There was no legal argument that could save Victor from the political decision that had already been made. Well, Victor, began Dr. Silvera, we hope you have reconsidered our proposal. The sale of your shares for a fair value would be best for everyone. Victor was about to respond when the double doors of the meeting room opened dramatically. Mariana entered carrying Gabriel in her arms, followed by Carmen, Dr. Fernanda, and a dozen other hospital employees. Behind them, to everyone's absolute shock, came Donna Alzira, the widow of the hospital's founder, an 82-year-old woman who rarely appeared in public. Mariana? Victor stood up, incredulous. What are you doing here? Saving the man I loved from a trap, she replied, with a firm voice that he had never heard before. Dr. Edwards stood up indignantly. Miss, this is a private meeting. You can't just can and will, interrupted Donna Alzira, tapping her cane on the floor. This is a meeting about the future of the hospital that my late husband built, and I have a lot to say about it. Silvera paled. Alzira was still a minority shareholder in the hospital, but her moral influence was immense. Mariana walked to the table, placed Gabriel in Victor's lap, who instinctively received him, and turned to face the four men. Gentlemen, she said, before you decide to destroy Victor's career because of a supposed scandal with me, I believe you should know the whole truth. She nodded to Dr. Fernanda, who approached with a folder of documents. We've discovered some interesting things about how this story got to the press, Mariana continued. For example, that Helena Caldwell is in partnership with Richard Alvarenga of the Alvarenga Hospital Network, your main competitor. Edward frowned. What does that have to do with? It has to do with the fact that she's not trying to win Victor back, Mariana interrupted him. She's trying to force him to sell his shares so that her boyfriend can buy the hospital for a fraction of its real value. Carmen stepped forward. I have here copies of the phone conversations that Helena had with reporters, offering exclusive information about Victor's personal life, and also the records of her visits to the hospital's main investors, spreading rumors about his mental instability. Donna Alzira tapped her cane again. In 50 years of funding this hospital, I have never seen such baseness. You are allowing a resentful ex-wife to destroy the reputation of the best surgeon this institution has ever had. Dr. Cardoso tried to regain control of the situation. Even if that's true, the fact remains that Dr. Caldwell's relationship with Miss... What relationship? Mariana asked, her voice sharp. The relationship where a generous doctor offered help to a single mother in despair? where a lonely man found a family, where two people fell in love in the purest and truest way possible. She turned to Victor, who was watching her as if he were seeing an angel. "Victor, I made the mistake of running away because I was afraid of hurting you, but I can't stay silent while they destroy the most honest man I have ever known, because of lies and manipulations." Victor stood up, still holding Gabriel. "Mariana, you don't have to." "I do have to," she interrupted him, tears streaming down her face. "I need to tell everyone that I fell in love with you, not for your money, not for your position, but for who you are, for how you held my hand during childbirth, for how you cradled my son in the early mornings, for how you looked at me as if I were the most precious thing in the world." The silence in the room was absolute. Gabriel chose that moment to giggle, breaking the tension in an adorable way. Donna Alzira smiled. "Dr. Fernanda, please read the document we prepared." Fernanda opened the folder. "Based on the evidence collected regarding the manipulation of Mrs. Helena Caldwell and the attempted sabotage of the interests of St. Joseph's Hospital, I, Alzira Mendonça, as a founding shareholder, propose a motion of confidence in Dr. Victor Caldwell. Furthermore, I propose that he be promoted to Director General of the institution." The four men were speechless. "Wait," Edward stammered. "You can't just..." "Can and am doing," Alzira replied. "My husband made it clear in his will that in cases of threats to the moral integrity of the institution, I have the power to veto administrative decisions." She smiled mischievously. "Did you really think I didn't know what you were plotting?" Carmen approached Victor. "Doctor, there's one more thing. 3 newspapers have already agreed to publish the truth about Helena. And the setup, the real story, will come out in Sunday's edition." Victor looked around the room, seeing the defeated expressions of his former allies, the encouraging smiles of loyal employees, and finally, the bright eyes of Mariana. "Mariana," he said, his voice choked with emotion, "why did you do all this?" She approached, gently touching his face. "Because you taught me that it's worth fighting for those we love. And because I want Gabriel to grow up knowing that his mother never gave up on the man she chose to be his father." Victor handed Gabriel to Carmen, and in front of everyone, took Mariana's face in his hands. "I love you," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "I've loved you since the moment I walked into that delivery room. I love you for your strength, for your courage, for making me remember who I really am." "And I love you," Mariana replied, "for showing me that true love is worth any fight." They kissed right there in front of everyone, while Gabriel clapped and the hospital staff applauded emotionally. Dr. Silveira stood up, clearly defeated. "Well, it seems the meeting is over." "Not yet," said Victor, without letting go of Mariana. He turned to his former partners. "You're right about one thing. This situation has really changed my life. It's changed because it's made me realize that working with people who put money above integrity is not what I want for my future." He smiled. "I accept Donna Alzira's promotion, and my first act as Director General will be to implement new ethical values in this institution." 6 months later, Victor and Mariana were married in a simple ceremony in Dio, the garden of the mansion. Gabriel, already crawling, was the most adorable ring-bearer any wedding has ever had. Helena had disappeared from Connecticut after the scandal of her attempted coup was exposed, and Richard Alvarenga faced investigations for unethical practices. During the party, Victor danced with Mariana under the stars, Gabriel sleeping peacefully in Carmen's arms. "I can't believe I almost lost you," Victor whispered in his wife's ear. "You didn't lose us," Mariana replied, smiling. "I would never let you. Some things are too strong to be broken, like our love, like our family." And there, surrounded by people who really mattered, they danced through the life they would have together. a life built not on money or social position, but on the truest and purest love that either of them could have imagined. Gabriel grew up knowing that he was loved from before he could even understand what that meant. And years later, when he asked about how his parents met, Mariana always said, "Your dad saved me on the most important day of my life, and I saved him back." Love, after all, had won.